Okay, so the planned subject is Ahimsa. After the explanation of the foundation of yoga being energy, Ahimsa. Ahimsa is one of the 5 yamas. So the yoga exists out of 8 limbs, only one of which is actually the physical exercise, asana. But the first step in yoga is not asana, which many people incorrectly think. It starts with 5 principles that help you to introduce more and more sattva in your life. Because exercise is a tool to bring about physical harmony, but most of the disharmony that we suffer from is caused by mental activity. That mental activity is subconscious. So we don't even know that we are engaging in that way, leading to the suffering, leading to the disharmony. So we start laying the foundation. We call them moral principles, which kind of gives the idea that we try to become holier than the Pope. Or worse, that we are striving to become morally superior compared to other people. That's absolutely not the case. Like with spirituality, this is not a luxury. It is this, more than the exercises, that will bring about the real transformation in your daily life. Ahimsa is non-violence. Non-violence means to refuse from now on to participate in violence, because violence is everywhere. Is this important? Yes, because violence is the #1 cause of disharmony. Now, when you think about violence, you think about punching somebody in the face or something. That is obvious. Huh? If you read the Bible, or many yoga teachers, they will explain the subject in 2 seconds. They will say, Ahimsa, oh, that means don't kill your neighbor. Subject closed, next subject. It's not that simple. Of course, killing your neighbor is violence, but everybody knows that. So we have to look at the more subtle aspects of violence, because there are many ways in which we not only undergo but engage in violence without us actually realizing that that is considered to be violence. First of all, violence begets violence. He who lives by the sword dies by the sword. It's all a matter of energy, again, of course. If I'm violent, you feel that instinctively. What is your reaction? Counter-violence. It's simple instinct. And because we do that subconsciously, it tends to end in a spiral of violence, a negative spiral. Non-violence is a way to prevent ourselves from disturbing our harmony. But it's not that easy. First of all, we must recognize violence, especially in its subtle forms. Look, violence in the past was a huge issue. Historians know that only a couple of 100 years ago, statistics show that more than 50% of the population died prematurely by violence alone. Try to let that sink in. more than 50% of people died prematurely by violence during their lifetime. And then you have, of course, the people that die from disease, malnutrition, natural disasters, and what have you. We don't live in such a time anymore. In just a couple of 100 years, around the world, there are still places where there's lots of violence, clearly. All you have to do is watch the news. But generally, the society in which we live, modern societies, the industrialized world, we have left that instinctive animal behavior behind us. But still there's a lot of violence, just not that obvious anymore. We have stopped killing every stranger that we come across and perceive as a threat, just because of the unknown. We have learned to control that animal instinct. But there's a lot of verbal violence going on at home, from your siblings or your parents, grandparents, parents-in-laws, in the workplace. In Korea you have all kinds of words for that. Wangta and kapchil, and there's so many forms of abuse that are in fact forms of violence. It happens everywhere. The thing is, we must recognize that violence is a shortcut. Violence is an easy way to get to a goal. Because that's why we do those kind of things. Or that's why your boss or your parents or your in-laws or your partner does these kind of things. Subconsciously, instinctively. We must recognize that it causes such incredible disharmony and can destroy relationships, whether that's professional or personal. It causes huge disruption, upheaval, unhappiness. Terrible. Nobody wants to live like that, but we think we have no choice because it's everywhere and we are part of it and we even participate in it. Ahimsa means, from today, refusing to go along with it. We have to learn to control. Control based on consciousness. So you first notice what is happening outside of you or inside of you. Outside of you means you feel somebody's aggression. Even if they don't speak or act physically. If only people have a violent thought, a mean thought, you feel that. Intuitively you feel that. And, more importantly, you will react upon it. If there is somebody in your surroundings who has negative thoughts about you without expressing them verbally or physically, you will change your attitude towards that person, subconsciously, unknowingly. It's just something that happens naturally. But it leads to a field of tension between the two of you. It leads to, eventually it will lead to unpleasant or even nasty interactions. So we start with consciousness and refusing to go along with it. So when you feel somebody's aggression, negative thought, nastiness, you have to make it conscious and say to yourself, hey, I see what is happening here. And now I feel it inside myself. I feel the nastiness, I feel the urge to react in kind. And then you say, no, I will not go along with this because I know where this leads. Of course I have a right to react like this, but am I willing to pay the price for that? The loss of my peace of mind? The necessity to engage in the tit for tat of this aggression? If you come to think of it, logically or commonsensically, of course you do not want to suffer from that. Everybody wants to be in paradise. Everybody wants to be happy. What this means is, it's not easy. You have to do effort. The easy way is the shortcut, is the aggression. But since you have suffered from that all your life without knowing it, now is the time to put that to an end. It is part of your development in yoga that you start paying attention to that. Of course you cannot be perfect. That is not the point. It is not that from today, now that you have learned this subject, that you become like Mahatma Gandhi, who is famous for his non-violent attitude. Although there are rumors that he also was not perfect, and that can also not be expected from him as a human being. And that is also not the point. Trying to be perfect in itself is a form of violence, because perfection doesn't exist. You need a playful attitude towards this. And along the way, you'll get better and better at it. And when you make mistakes, instead of guilt, beating yourself over the head for being so stupid and what have you, which is a form of violence, which most of us are really good at, destroying ourselves out of shame or regret or guilt. Instead of doing that, we try to think in a positive way. Because from today, you start recognizing it. And you will make mistakes. Noticing afterwards what went wrong in hindsight. But that is where you learn your most valuable lessons in life. So instead of guilt, regret, and what have you, which is not constructive at all, you think in a positive way. And you say, okay, I messed up today, that's true. But at least I'm aware of it now. And from here on forward, it can only get better. Try to replace the pessimistic and the negative attitude for a more constructive and positive attitude. And apply this to everything in life. We will come back to this almost every lesson, because this is a huge part of yoga and the transformation that it is promising you. If I hit you, you hit me back. Everybody understands. But we must pay attention to how we think and feel internally. And here you can see also how your yoga practice comes into play. Because only learning about these issues without creating the condition of the mind to contemplate is not really going to bring a breakthrough. But it is your yoga practice, the practical part, standing still in asana, sitting on your cushion with your eyes closed, observing, meditating, contemplating. That is where you develop your insights. That is where you see not only what went wrong, but how you can improve that. The solutions come to you in your moments of silence. In yoga, in many yoga classes, the goal is to do poses that are advanced, pretzel poses, and to do those poses perfectly. And teachers who are not properly initiated into yoga, they will scold you when your pose is not perfect. And sometimes they will come to you and pull and push to get it right, sometimes leading to injury, to pain, pulled muscle or a hurt. This is violence, right? So perfectionism can never be the goal. of your yoga practice. Again, everything is energy. When you enjoy your asana, your yoga posture, without pain, without frustration because it's not ideal or perfect, that is when your energy household is optimal. That is when your energy circulation is optimal, which is the goal of yoga. So it is in total contradiction with this that you are confronted with concept of failure. That in itself is violence upon yourself. The concept of not being able to do a pose perfect, which is failure, leads to a blockage of energy. So in total contradiction with yoga. So asana must be, it is controlled, it requires discipline, but it must stay within the limits of the moral principles. If you push too far, or the teacher pushes you too far, it's violence. It leads to a blockage of energy, which is in contradiction with yoga. In the long term, it leads to disease, one form or another. So it's very important to understand that. And in the beginning, if you find it a little bit difficult to implement the principle of non-violence in daily life situations with other people, interactions and so on, just simply start implementing it in your yoga practice. You practice in silence, no music, no teacher that is constantly talking. That's the silence in which you practice automatically leads to a sensitivity that you otherwise don't have. Then when you feel pain, it's violence. When you feel frustration, it's violence. When you feel any form of discomfort, it is basically telling you, have a look at this. Either you are pushing yourself too far, or there is another way that you can do it in which there is not that discomfort. Discomfort, pain are signals, not something to be suffered, which is what human beings naturally do. When we're confronted with pain, we kind of drown in the pain because of ego. But we must overcome ego and simply directly go to the source. I experience pain. What is it trying to tell me? Why is this happening? What is causing it? And then when it comes to your yoga practice, it is simply requiring an adjustment to your approach. Very often a mental adjustment. That is where you will start to realize how subconsciously, unknowingly, violent you can be. To yourself, but also to the world around you. And when you start seeing that in your yoga practice, your daily practical situations in your yoga practice, it will just very naturally, in contemplative moments, you will start to recognize situations outside of your practice. And that is how yoga will gradually integrate into your daily life, into your work, into private relationships, etc. Somewhere page 2 or 3 there is something about pain. Later we will come back to that in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. But here, page 3. Violence can be recognized through pain, which can be very subtle. Any disturbance, any disruption, even the slightest disturbance or disruption, in yoga is considered to be pain. Very, very subtle. In the normal world that we live in, these kind of signals are totally ignored. But for us, it's a signal, it's telling us something about the situation that we are dealing with. We have lived in this world for so many years, depending on our age, have dealt with all the gross elements of life. Now it is time to start paying attention to subtle elements of life and make the picture complete. One does not go without the other, but the other is often not acknowledged, we're not aware of, and so there is always this disharmony in our lives that leads to conflict. There are daily conflicts. There are conflicts throughout the day, multiple conflicts that can actually be avoided if only we start paying attention to the subtle signals that we receive. Yoga calls it pain, but everything that is not harmonious, in fact, is considered pain in yoga. The slightest disruption of harmony in yoga means pain. And for us, pain is not something to suffer, it's a signal. It's like when you get sick. If there is a disharmony, a blockage in your energy circulation, there are very subtle signals that we don't see. Very small signals that are not even considered pain, but there is a very small discomfort you start to experience. You ignore that because you don't understand it. You don't see the cause and effect. You don't see the link. So, because you ignore it, the body will give a stronger signal in the form of a more severe symptom. If you ignore that, it will simply get worse until you start paying attention or until you die. And very often, and this is a little bit a problem with modern medicine, you go to a doctor and the doctor will give you a medicine for the symptom, but not for the cause. So you oppress the symptom, the pain, or whatever the symptom is, but as soon as you stop with the medicine, it will come back because the cause has not been taken away. So traditional medicine and yoga, if it is done correctly, because not always, just like yoga is not always done correctly, traditional medicine or doctors are also not always approaching it correctly. But if it is done correctly, you always need to, you use the signal, the pain, the discomfort, to lead you to the cause. And you make a correction not to the symptom will go away when you make a correction to the cause. Take away the cause of the disharmony or the blockage in your energy circulation, and you will heal. This is about disease, but this is very much, and maybe even more practical, about interhuman relationships. Because without you knowing it, all day you are scanning people's energies. Even when you go into the subway or the bus, or you walk in the street, or you go to a shop, subconsciously you're always scanning people's energies. And if you don't pay attention, which we don't, you will act and react. We live a constant reactionary life. As a result of that, we're never in sattva, never in harmony. So the first step is to start becoming aware of that. And based on that awareness, gradually, over time, more and more to eliminate that. Now, like I said, it can't be perfect. You will very often find yourself to be aware of something that happened in hindsight. But I'm going to use a word that I normally tell you not to use. Practice makes perfect. And when you keep doing this, you become a karma yogi. A karma yogi is the highest level of development in yoga. That means not only have you dealt with past karma, which is very important because your past experiences, traumas, determine who you are today. It also determines how you act and react today. So, the first step on your path of yoga is to develop insight into the past and then to avoid acting and reacting upon it in the present. But a karma yogi is somebody who, based on many years of putting this into practice, many years of trial and error, failure, making mistakes, develop insight to the point that you avoid making karma. How does that work? Based upon your increasing experience, trial and error, making mistakes and understanding them consciously, you develop a very fine-tuned insight into yourself and human nature. In the current condition, things happen and you have to reflect on what happened and why it happened in hindsight, afterwards. As a karma yogi, you have antennas that are so highly developed that you already know there is a situation going to evolve, going to appear. Something is going to happen because the energy is already out there. Energy that normal people do not detect. Either energy within yourself, that you know that you are going to do something that you better avoid, but also in certain situations that you already, before anything has even happened, you already know where it is going, and you can simply abort it. You can simply avoid karma from happening, from occurring. You develop the capability of anticipation. You anticipate situations before they even happened. And then you have the choice, is this auspicious? Is this positive? Okay, then I will let it unfold. But if it feels any form of disharmony, pain, conflict, whatever, negative, you then say, no, I see where this is going. I will not allow this to happen. It's something that you already possess. It's something that you subconsciously already sometimes do. But this ability will become magnified. And that is where it becomes karma yoga. But you only get there through trial and error. I always call it a process of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This is very important. Perfectionism doesn't exist. It's in the eye of the beholder. Improvement, growth, cannot happen without the process of failure and learning from the failure. Can you see that? 2 steps forward is growth. 1 step back. Always when things seem to be going well, something happens that makes you, oh, why? Everything was going so well, and now why am I having this misery? Why am I experiencing this failure, or this conflict, or this terrible thing that's happening? No. It is important that you go through those negative experiences, failures, and what have you, without losing yourself in regret, guilt, and what have you, blame. Because the experience of dealing constructively with the failure lays the foundation for the next 2 steps forward. And it is because of this, that you allow this and approach it in a constructive way, that you become a very dynamically developing yogi. To make sense out of this, what I'm saying, you must look at the people around you and acknowledge that most people kind of stand still. I've been in Korea for 25 years. When I look at people that I left behind in the Netherlands 25 years ago, they're still the same. With the same job, with the same hobbies, they still say the same stupid things and the same stupid jokes. I mean, it sounds a little bit negative, that's just human. But I'm trying to paint a picture here, because as a yogi, you look back 25 years and you see, yes, you're still the same. I'm still the same Ronnie that came to Korea 25 years ago. But I have evolved enormously. Enormously. It would never have happened with yoga, without yoga. Why? Because I learned from my mistakes. Because I did what I'm telling you to do. By approaching things in a constructive way, without drowning in misery and guilt and regret whenever you are struck by negative experiences. The reason why karma, past experience, traumatic and other negative experiences, determines who you are today and how you act and react today, leading to new and more misery, is because we are not aware of that. Because we are not capable of avoiding the conflict or the negative reaction today that is actually caused by something that happened 30 years ago. And what do we do when we think about past experiences? We go to a bar, order a big beer, and we get drunk, and oh, I'm so pitiful, and I'm so miserable, and why me, and all those people are happy, and I'm so sad, and okay, that is human. And the more traumatic experiences you had in the past, the more difficult it actually is to have a positive and a constructive approach towards it. But that is where yoga comes in. With yoga, you develop the ability to grab the bull by the horns, put things into perspective, and take control of the present and your future. Sometimes at the introduction workshop, I tell a little bit about my past. So not everybody knows that story, but I come from a big family, 7 kids. When I was 13 years old, my parents separated, very painful for children in their teenage years. A lot of misery happened as a result of that. The whole family fell into a deep, dark pool of pain and misery. And I had 3 brothers. There were 4 boys, 3 girls in that family, my family. 2 of those brothers I grew up with. The oldest brother was kind of standing a little bit on his own, developed on his own. But 3 brothers were born in a row, every year 1 child. So we always stuck together. We always did everything together. We did all our discovering of the world around us. We did everything together. And we experienced the misery in our teenage years together, leading to drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and what have you. My 2 brothers died in their mid-40s. And what I'm saying here is that I would have died in my mid-40s too if I had not discovered yoga and separated myself from that destiny. So I did what I'm telling you to do. Suffering from past trauma and misery, but then becoming aware of it, and most of all becoming aware of how it is making my life miserable today, without any apparent reason, other than it's something that happened in the past. And that is where I took control. That is why I had the audacity, I left everything behind and came to Korea with a suitcase and some money in my pocket. People thought I was crazy, but that was what my karma made me do. Instead of dying like my brothers did, prematurely, in sheer misery from alcohol and drug abuse, I canalized the energy of my past traumatic experience into doing something following my heart. People ask, why did you come to Korea? You know, the short answer is destiny. But destiny made me discover yoga. Because of yoga, I looked inside my heart and what do I really want to do? I was just 20 years old, so you're a little bit idealistic at that time. So my biggest interest at that moment, for that moment, was not a career, but I wanted to practice Hapkido, martial arts, Korean martial arts. So that is why I'm here. We had a Korean Kwanjangnim, a Korean master, who left, of course, because his whole family was here. After a couple of years, he left. And I was frustrated that he left and I couldn't learn more. So, Korea at the time was not so, people didn't know much about Korea, other than the Korean War. They didn't even know on the map exactly where it was, other than somewhere in Asia. Much has changed, of course. Everybody knows Korea now. Because of soccer, 2002, they did really well with the Dutch coach, Hiddink. But K-pop, and these days you can buy kimchi all around the world, everywhere, even soju. And kas beer, what have you, ramyun, you can buy everywhere nowadays. But at that time that was not the case yet. But you develop an interest, you follow your heart, you go to the library, get books about Korean history, you go to a Korean restaurant, there were only 2 in Amsterdam at the time, now there are many. Go to a Korean restaurant, eat bulgogi, And that idea starts to develop in your mind that you need to go to Korea. It took me 9 years to prepare, to my sadness at that time. But now I understand why it took me 9 years. Because my Hapkido buddies had the same feeling as I had. They wanted to go to Korea too. And they came to Korea within 1 year of our Hapkido teacher leaving Amsterdam. And I was very frustrated. While they were here doing their thing, I was at home being sad and miserable and frustrated. If I look back now, I know that I followed the right approach. Because what I did is I prepared. What they did, they came here, and depending on the amount of money they all had to go back. One left after 4 months, running out of money. Another one stayed for 6 months, running out of money. The one that stayed the longest stayed 1 year and had to go back. All of them went back to their old lives, to their old jobs, to their old everything. I went to school studying business administration and economy and English. My English was good. Dutch people speak English quite well naturally, but just English in the package also, in the curriculum. Just it doesn't hurt to study more. I had to finish that. I did that in the evening after work, going to school. And Friday night, I would go to Ajita, study yoga. Because I knew, people say when you go to Korea, if you want to stay there for a long time, maybe you can teach English, the obvious thing. My Hapkido master said, learn how to make cocktails. You can work in the international hotel bars. And I thought, alcohol, not good for me. That is not a good idea. I did learn how to make cocktails. I went to school to get a barkeeper diploma. But I knew in my heart that's not, for me, I would probably become my own best customer. So, yoga. I thought, English, that is not my thing. I'm not a native speaker and not really enthusiastic about that idea. And yoga is my thing. Yoga is my life. And yoga, anywhere around the world, you can teach yoga. So I was very determined I had to have everything done properly before actually going. So my evening school study was 2 years. It took me 4 because I dropped out and I drank beer and had to register again. Same with yoga. 4 years, of course, with Ajita took me 7 years to complete, but I did. And when it all was done, I got stuck because my brothers. I knew when you're a yogi, you have a contemplative mind. You can see people's future, and I knew that my brothers were simply on their way of self-destruction, and it's my blood. It's something that you cannot rationalize. It stood in my way. So one day I had dropped out again of the course with Ajita, and I called Ajita. Email didn't exist yet, internet didn't exist yet, so I called him on my phone. I said, Ajit, I'm so stuck. Can I talk with you? Then he reluctantly said, oh, okay. He couldn't say no, but I know that he didn't like it. But anyway, he said, okay, why don't you come 6 o'clock to my house? So I went there, and he put me on a 2-seat IKEA sofa, small sofa, and he said, here, sit down. And he sat down next to me, and he said, tell me, what's up, what's wrong? Well, he didn't say what's wrong. You will understand why. He said, tell me, why do you want to talk with me? So I started pouring out all my misery, especially about my past and about my brothers and my frustration, inability to help. Then he said, wait. He very quickly cut me off. And he said, wait, don't talk about your misery. What do you want? So I said, I want to go to Korea. That was my obsession. No other answer possible. I want to go to Korea. Then he said, okay, what do you need to do for that? Finish my yoga training with you until I'm licensed, finish my night school, and earn enough money so that I can at least last for 2 years without income in Korea. I had to be here at least for 2 years to get my 3rd degree black belt. I had calculated. So he said, okay, from today, don't talk about your misery anymore. Don't think about your misery anymore. Only focus on those 3 things. Come back to my class, go back to night school, and keep working, saving money. And I did exactly that. It was the best advice I ever had in my life. Basically, it was a kick in the butt that I needed. But it also shows how difficult, how complicated human beings are. I had just become so stuck in my karma. Family situation is karma. Past experiences is karma. I had become so stuck. I just needed a kick in the butt, a refreshing outlook on how you can handle all these kind of things differently. As a result of that, I have become very skillful at giving people a kick in the butt too. So all bad things turn into good things if you're on the path of yoga. Your past trauma, your past experiences that make you miserable will turn into something good when you're on this path. The most wonderful people, when you watch documentaries or interviews, CNN and BBCs very often have these programs where they interview somebody who does something special for mankind. It's always people who have been deeply traumatized, who came at a crossroads, could have self-destructed, but then chose the constructive and the positive way. That's what yoga does. That's something that yoga offers to us all. It starts here. We're not studying Yama, Niyama to become holier than the Pope or holier than Tao or superior, but to start looking at ourselves and the way that we function, so that finally we can grab the bull by the horn and take control of our destiny. Truly, literally, our destiny. Amazing, huh? Takes time, it takes a lot of effort. The thing is, you know the poem. I always forget who wrote the poem, but you're walking on a road and you end up in a fork in the road and you have to choose, am I going left or am I going right? Yeah? 99% of all people go to the left, which is the road that is comfortable, that is convenient, that is obvious. The 1% that chooses to go to the right sees obstacles, challenges, and difficulties, but sees them not as a negative, but sees them as an opportunity to grow, but also as a necessity to be able to leave the past behind, to leave the misery behind. That is what yogis do. Yogis will choose the right path when they arrive at the fork in the road, because they realize that if they choose the left side, it may be on the surface convenient and comfortable and void of challenges and obstacles, but it is killing the spirit. It is very unsatisfactory. If you look around you, you will see that most people are in such a kind of condition. Having a career, making money to be relatively comfortable, and then basically staying put in their comfort zone. That is what I see when I look at the people that I left behind 25 years ago. What they see when they look at me, if they have the consciousness, they don't, but they see somebody who left the comfort zone and embraced all the obstacles and challenges and used them as stepping stones to grow, develop, and take control. Good. Questions? I have merged several subjects with Ahimsa, but that is how inspiration works. You will have heard things today that will be repeated again and again because they are so important and can only remain within you if repeated again and again. Okay, let's have a short break. This was quite long altogether.